Please, ma'am.
Thanks so much, Stephen. My name is Kacy Keith, and I am an alcoholic. I've been sober since November 8th of 2008. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I always get nervous still, so I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I wasn't looking for this. I wasn't looking for friends. I wasn't looking for an extra family when I came here. And what I've gotten from AA is far beyond anything that me or my family could have imagined. You have brought me out of the gutter and some pretty sad and sorry place. And I didn't ever think I was going to make it this far. And I'm just so blessed by the people in my life and by all of you. And I love what you were talking about, Stephen. Going to other towns. Every time I leave town, I go to meetings, and I love to go to out of town meetings. I meet people. I can go almost anywhere in the United States and some other countries. And if I was broke down, I know that I could get a hold of someone there. That's how AA is. The hand of AA reaches so far. Anyhow, to get to my story, I grew up in a house full, of alcoholic, addict. My mom was into drugs pretty heavily, and my dad did both. And I just thought that was normal. And we lived on the mountain above Buffalo, Wyoming for years. We didn't have power. We didn't have running water. And I thought that was normal. And it's just not normal to do that. I was truant for school because we lived on the mountain. I couldn't get off the mountain, or we couldn't get off the mountain sometimes to even go to school. And that didn't seem to bother my folks. I always told myself, when I have kids, I am not going to raise my kids like that. I felt like, heathen in the mountains. Today, I think they call it living off the grid. And I think that I would enjoy it as I've gotten older. But at the time, it just wasn't any fun. So I started building these resentments when I was young. We didn't have power. I had to go outside in the snow and go to the bathroom, and I just hated it. And but I learned a lot of things. I have great work ethic. My folks taught me how to work because we cut firewood for a living. And we'd cut a bunch of wood and on one day unload the truck, and we'd haul it 2.5 hours south to Casper, and we'd unload it. And I was the one that always had to go with my dad because my little brother was too little to go and he wasn't any help. And then my older sister had a bad hip, so she didn't have to help. So I was just stuck working all the time. And I just got to be where I was just angry, and I didn't have friends. I had this one friend that came up one time, and she brought her curling iron, and we were going to school the next day, and she's like, "Where do I plug my curling iron in?" I'm like, you don't. It's like, you're gonna have to curl it when you get to school because we don't have those luxuries. And that's just the way we lived. Some things happened with that, when you have drugs and alcohol in your life as a little kid, and some shady characters come around. My folks had guys that would work for them, and when they would, what happened is I got sexually abused as a little girl. Because of the things, the people that my folks brought around. And then I just got angrier, and I turned more inside, and I was just poisoned from the inside out. And I blamed everyone, but I never talked about it. I didn't know until I did a 4-step that stuff wasn't my fault. And my sponsor, kept telling me, it's like, put those people's name down on that list. And I'm like, I don't owe them anything. Why would I put them on a list? I'm thinking, everybody I put on this list, I'm going to have to make an amends to. And she said, Kacy, just trust the process. And I did. I wrote those names down. And when I got to those names, I was not very nice when I wrote the stuff about them. And she just kept telling me, just trust the process. And so when we did a 5th step, she told me, she said, you don't owe them an amends, but you definitely owed yourself an amends. I didn't have the guts to go to my parents and say, hey, this is what is happening. I was too afraid. I was always afraid of my dad. And my mom, I just knew she would have sided with my dad. And so I just never talked about that stuff. I just held it all inside, and for years and years and years. And I never got any relief from those things until I worked a 4th and a 5th step. And today I can talk about it. It doesn't own me anymore. I never thought I would ever get that relief. And so thankfully, the 12 steps covers every aspect of my life. Never did I think that I could ever get past that. I held you hostage. I held men hostage that were with me. And then it created me, it created me to be promiscuous, you know. So what happened is I married young. I had these two little girls, you know. I had one before I even left high school. And I just thought, you know, I'm going to be the best mom, and this little kid is going to save my life. And you know, I was a great mom, but those kids did not take that pain and that poison out of my body. You know, I could have 10 kids and it wouldn't have fixed that. It took a fourth and a fifth step to get there. Um, so what happened is, you know, I married and I had these two kids, and I was married long enough to have them, and then I moved on. You know, I was suffering the disease of alcoholism way before I even knew I had alcoholism. You know, I drank a few times in high school, and I didn't go party with the other kids. Well, because I was working all the time. You know, my folks ended up getting a divorce when I was like in eighth grade. I ended up going with my mom for a while, and she was just a mess. So I moved out on my own, and I was going to work, riding the bus home, or ride the bus home, and then I would go to school the next day, and I'd ride the bus out to work. And I did that for 2 months, you know, before my mom turned me in. She didn't realize she thought I was living with a friend and I was living on my own, but I was functioning. I was a 16-year-old kid, and I was making the right choices because I watched what my mom and dad had done, and I was not going to be like them. I had so many resentments towards them, and I was not going to be that person. So what happened is she turned me in, and I ended up going to some foster homes. You know, at the time I didn't like it, but it was one of the best things that could have happened to me because, you know, they taught me that, you know, life is not about drugs and alcohol. And they tried to love on me, and I tried to love them back, and I just couldn't do it. They just weren't my people. And so I went to 5 different foster homes, and, you know, and then I ended up having to go, you know, to my dad's. And that's when I was with my dad, I met an older guy, and then I got pregnant with those two little girls, and I love them with all my heart. You know, they're my life. And now I have these amazing grandkids. Who would have thought that having grandkids was so great? And I get to enjoy them sober. So anyway, I divorced him, and found another one right away. And that's kind of a pattern I have, is that, you know, I need a guy to fill my heart up, you know, because I'm so alone, and I'm angry, and a guy's going to fix that. And never one time did a guy fix that. You know, the women I sponsor, you know, I have this thing: if they're not in a relationship, they're not going to get in one for, I try to do a year, you know. It's just like, I put that out there, and not all of them make it, but I'll tell you, the ones that do, they learn to love themselves. They work the steps, and then they realize, you know, why it's so important. I have this one little gal, was trying to get into a relationship at about 4 or 5 months of sobriety, and it just didn't work. And she almost went out when this gal left. And I'm so proud of her, because now she's 3 years sober, and she saw why it's so important that we wait and work those steps, because we don't have anything to offer. I never had anything to offer any of those relationships that I got in. And so it's just important that, you know, I have to know what God has left, you know, has out there for me. So anyway, so I was doing these moves, you know, with the relationships. You know, I got into another one, and then we had another little girl. And when I had left my first husband, you know, I wasn't drinking, but I just couldn't stay. There was this itch in me. It's like, there's something more out there for me. And that's the alcoholism. You know, we talk about it in the big book about having all these geographicals. And, you know, I moved, you know, from one place to the next with them. But I had to move relationships, you see, because I wasn't happy, and it was to a different town. And, you know, I can do geographics in Billings, Montana. It's still big enough that I can move from the West End and move to the Heights, and think that it's going to be any different over there. And that's how my relationships were. You know, so I married this second guy, and this little girl I had, and I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to lose her in a divorce. And I fought. I had to give up everything we had, you know, to him for the 10 years I was with him, so I could keep that little girl. And that's exactly what I did. You know, I had to sign my other girls over to their dad, but I got them in the summertime, and I wasn't going to do it this time. My drinking hadn't really taken off, but there were times, you know, during that relationship that I was on a couple bowling leagues, and I would bowl and I'd go and close the bar, and I wasn't faithful in either one of those relationships. I'd close the bar and stay out till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And really, I was the one that was getting people to go to the house parties, because I wasn't done. But I didn't think that that was alcoholism, because see, I could go home and not drink for another 2 weeks or 3 weeks and function. I went to work. There were some days that I ran heavy equipment for 10 years. And, there were some days that I should have never gotten on a piece of equipment because I was still hungover, and maybe had only stopped drinking 2 or 3 hours before that, and I look back and I'm just so thankful I didn't hurt anybody, because, it would have been a disaster. But there were days, that I stayed out till 4 or 5 in the morning and went to work and run heavy equipment. And anyway, so I had this little girl and left him. And then I really started bouncing around. I went from Wyoming out to Oregon and found some people that I drank with out there. And then I actually started enjoying it, because when they partied out there, it was way bigger than a party in small town Wyoming. And I still didn't drink a lot, and so I would never have thought it as alcoholic drinking. I've blacked out and never thought it was alcoholic drinking. But I drank and drove, and I drank and drove with my little girl in the car, and I'm not proud of those things. It's just where I was. I'm hanging out with normies that can go and party and then not drink again. And it just never kicked off until I got older. I'm kind of a late bloomer. So I think that drinking like I did, it's just, if I would have tried harder at 18 and got into Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 18 or 19, I would have been so happy. I sponsor a gal right now that has one more year of sobriety than me, and she got sober at 19, and she just has the best life. And I wish we could all get it at that age. But unfortunately, that's not all of our stories. So anyway, so I moved from Portland back to Wyoming and found some drinkers there, and moved down to Oklahoma and found some drinkers there. And I was just never happy. I would get in and out of relationships, and I was just so tore up on the inside, and I didn't think that I had anything to offer. And being a mom it just wasn't enough. I was always looking for something more, and I never knew what it was. I didn't know what it was until I hit AA. But anyway, so I went to Oklahoma, and we were down there. My oldest daughter ended up coming to live with me. And so then I had my littlest, which is Mackenzie, and I had my oldest daughter. And then alcoholism and drug addiction hit my mom's new family. She had had 2 kids after she had divorced my dad. And so I had my little half brother and sister, and my little half brother started using, a bunch of pills. He started drinking, and he was just, 16, 17 years old. And so my little sister wanted to come live with me. So it was me and my 2 daughters and my little sister in Oklahoma. And oh my gosh, we had so much fun. We were painting houses. I had some friends that I started drinking more with. There were times that I would let my oldest daughter drive my pickup to school because I couldn't get out of bed. And it's just, I don't know if I wasn't drinking so much. I was just I think I was falling into, kind of a depression, with the drinking and still with that stuff I was trying to deal with. And I just couldn't get past it. And I didn't really have anybody to talk to about it either. And so what do you do? Because I didn't share that stuff with anyone. And so it was just eating my lunch. So anyway, we came back to Wyoming and to visit my dad one weekend, and I met another guy. Imagine that. This guy is exactly what I've been looking for all these years. I imagined this white picket fence and a little place where I could keep my horses, and it was just going to be great. So what I did is I loaded all my girls up, and we came back to Wyoming. He was in Wyoming then, and I'm going to finally make something work. I don't care what I have to do, but I'm going to make this relationship work. And so we came back, and they were mad. They were hating on me. They were loving their life in Oklahoma, but it was all about me. It was just so selfish that I would ever think, that they had feelings or that they had friends. And I just couldn't do it because it's like, you guys don't understand. I'm living in fear. I'm thinking that I'm not going to be able to support you guys, long term. And, a guy's going to fix that. So we come up to Wyoming, and it was about 3 weeks when we got back. And my mom called me, and she said my little brother had been in a terrible accident between Buffalo and Casper. And so we jumped in the pickup and we ran down to Casper. And when we got there, I didn't know if he was going to make it or not. And eventually we found out that, he was brain dead. And we wouldn't know if he was going to be able to. I guess you're brain dead, you're not going to stay alive. But we were still hoping, at those last moments, we're like, please, please, God, just give us a miracle. And he didn't. And I started hating God, because God he hadn't done anything for me all my life. I had believed in him and I had loved him, but he had never made my life easy at all. I thought it was all God's fault, and it wasn't. It was all these actions that I was taking. It had nothing to do with God. I learned that he didn't ever turn his back on me. But anyhow, what happened is, he passed away, and, I condoned us coming back from Oklahoma to be there for my mom. Had we not come back from Oklahoma, we would have not been able to come up and be there for my mom when my little brother, passed away. And, I just said, see, guys, God was working somehow, because he brought us back up here for this. And they still weren't happy, but I was, that's all that mattered, as long as Kacy was happy. And so what happened is I eventually married that guy. And my daughter ended up going back to her dad, because we were going to move to Montana and she didn't want to move to Montana. And then my little sister eventually went back over to my mom's place, because, my little brother wasn't there and there was no more drugs and alcohol. And so Kinsey and I and this guy moved up to Montana, and he was a drinker. And I can't say that he's an alcoholic, because we know that, I can't declare anyone an alcoholic. I have to do that for myself. And but he drank, and he drank every day. And I just thought, that's kind of normal. People go to work, they come home, and they drink to relax. And so maybe that's what I should be doing. And things were not great with him. I'm going to say it was probably not the best move I ever made. But again, I'm going to make it work. No matter what I have to do, I'm going to make this relationship work, because I've tried it enough times and it has to work eventually. So his drinking was fine. And so what I did is I started drinking with him. And I wasn't going out and closing bars. At that time he was a home drinker. And so I thought that was okay. But we could invite people out and have parties at the house. And so that's what we did. But I got to where I couldn't sleep at night. And so my drinking had to, I had to drink more just to sleep. But, in October of 2007, my stepmom had been fighting breast cancer for months, and she'd been in the hospital in Gillette. And I got the call one day from my dad, and he said, Helen's decided to come home and just be done with this. She'd had chemo, she'd had radiation, and she'd been cooped up in this hospital room, for 3 months during the summertime. And I was just like devastated. And I'm like, why would she do that to us? She's, we're fighting it. The numbers are good. And then all of a sudden overnight, the numbers just skyrocketed. And the doctor pretty much told her, she doesn't have a chance. And that just broke my heart. And so what I did is I loaded up and I went from Montana down to Wyoming, and I was with my dad for 2 weeks while we waited for her to pass away. And that's probably when my drinking really took off. We drank the whole time. I mean, not so much that we couldn't take care of her, but, about 11 o'clock at night, we would really start, tying it on. And the good thing about that, and I didn't realize it was such a blessing until after, it was all over. That's usually how my blessings are, is I have to go back and look. It's like, oh, I can see God's hand in that. Oh, I can see God's hand over here too. And that's exactly what happened is, I got to spend those 2 weeks with my dad And we talked about all that stuff that had happened to me as a little girl. And so he, in his own way, was making his amends to me. And, dads think I'm going to go take care of the problem. And it's like, no, we're not doing that, because, they'll suffer their own misery. And they already had, I had heard things along the way that, things didn't ever work out for those guys. So, they were suffering their own karma. And, but what happened is we got to heal that relationship. He was, I was close to my dad for years, for a long time, until some things came between us. And then we were fixing that relationship. And so those 2 weeks that we had were such a gift from God that I would never give them away. It was great. We were working the ninth step and we didn't even know it. And so what happened is, she passed away and I went back to Montana and I drank. I couldn't sleep. I drank. I woke up in the middle of the night. I drank, and it just kicked off. I mean, I was still going to work though. I was functioning. Again, there were days that I was driving into Billings from out of from our place, where I should have never been driving. Because I probably would have tested positive, or 0.08. I would definitely have been over 0.08, but I did it a lot. It got to be where when I woke up in the morning, my hands were shaking so bad that I had to take a drink in the morning just to stop the shakes so I could finish my paperwork at the house, because we had a trucking company. And then I would come into town and work for the day. And then I would come back home and then start drinking again. So what that brings is a lot of problems in a relationship. And so we started fighting, but he was drinking and I was drinking, but I'm the one that was supposed to stop. And because I was the problem, and I just wasn't going for that. I'm very headstrong and very independent. It's like, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. So it just got worse and worse and worse. I went to a counselor. She put me on these psych meds and sleeping meds, and she put me on Ambien. I don't know if anybody's been on Ambien in here, but it's not a sleep medication that alcoholics should take, especially if you're going to drink with it. It's really not a med that we would let any of our people take. It's sober living. We have sober livings too now. And it's like, no, we're not doing Ambien, because people do crazy things on Ambien. And so I would get up after I'd been to bed for a couple hours and I'd taken Ambien, and I would get up and do things I didn't even know I was doing. And I'm sure, coupled with the alcohol, it was just having a bad reaction. Anyhow, so eventually the fights got so bad that they would start calling the cops. And what happened is, on May 5th of 2008, I got a call from my dad's new girlfriend, and she said that he was unresponsive. And I didn't know what to do with that. He was the one person that I told everything to. I called him every day, maybe multiple times in a day. If I had something wrong at the house, I called my dad. If I had something wrong with the car, I called my dad. He was my sponsor then, and it broke my heart. And at that time, I was like, those 2 weeks that we had were God's gift to me, and so what, I went down to Wyoming and I just got obliterated. I embarrassed my whole family at a restaurant down there, but I couldn't help it. I didn't realize that alcohol was just tearing me to threads. And, we brought him back up here and we buried him up here. And my husband and I agreed. It's like, okay, we're not going to drink the day of the service. And I had every intention of not drinking during that day. And I couldn't not do it. I didn't realize that alcoholism had taken control of my whole life. So what happened is, I drank to oblivion that night, and he called the cops on me the next day because we were fighting so bad. What happened is, I was sitting on the porch and I had a loaded pistol, and I was writing letters, and I didn't think anybody knew where I was because I was going to end it right then. And I was just over it. And then he called the cops, and, I had to go to the psych ward, and it's the one and only time I had to go to the psych ward, and I never want to go back. But when I was in that psych ward, I said a prayer. I begged God to help. It's like, can you please fix this? Fix the relationship. I'll stop drinking. I'll do anything. And I really meant it. I totally meant it, that I just wanted my life back on track. And, but it was 3 days. I got out of the psych ward and I didn't drink for 3 whole days. And then I had to drink again. And I didn't know that this is obsession thing that you talk about had taken hold of me. You know, the obsession, the illusion, the delusion. I thought it would be different. Maybe if I maintain and only have 2 drinks at night, maybe it will be different if I could control it. But then I would have 2 drinks at night and I'd have to have 3 and 4 and 5. And it just kept going on and on. And it was terrible. It's just like, what is this? But then I rationalized and I told myself, I said, you know, I'm just getting through a couple of deaths here. You know, I need to drink. Any normal person would drink during this time. And that's what I told myself. I told myself all these lies that we tell ourselves. It's going to be different. If I drink wine, maybe I won't drink so much. I tried beer, mind you, and I hated beer, but I tried beer and it's terrible. But I always had to go back, you know, rum and Diet Pepsi was my drink. And, but I just couldn't stop. And what happened is we had one more fight. And on June 27th, or I guess it was June 26th, we had this huge fight. I called my cousin and I said, you know what he did this time? And he just yelled at me and he said, Kacy, you need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And at the time I knew that my cousin had went for years, but I didn't realize, you know, I didn't know anything about AA. And he said, you need AA. And I'm like, okay, I'll go. And so I didn't trust that he would get me to a meeting. So I called the AA hotline and we actually went to the same, I mean, the guy he called to get me to a meeting and this gal I got on the hotline, they went to the same meeting. So I showed up there. You know, I showed up fashionably late too, because I didn't want to talk to anybody. You know, I was 5 minutes late and everybody was already talking. And so I sat there and I was like scared as heck. And I'm like, what did I agree to? Anyhow, what happened is these 5 women after the meeting, they just bombarded me and they're all talking to me and, hey, you want to go to this retreat we have? It starts tomorrow. And I'm like, well, I don't have anything to lose, I guess. You know, it kind of sounded like fun. And I said, yeah, you bet I'll go. And so my then sponsor, she trusted me to drive there. And so we never ever let a newcomer drive themselves because they're not going to show up, right? But anyway, she trusted me to drive there. I got there and she was surprised. But anyhow, so they went to take my bags up this hill. And all I could think is like, he's always looking for my alcohol. That's what they're doing. Those people are going to look at my bags and they're going to look and see if I have any alcohol and they're going to be so surprised. And that's not at all what happened. They just took my bags to the cabin where we were staying. But I didn't trust, you know, at this time, I didn't trust anybody because everybody that was in my life was against me. And the whole handful of people that I do have in my life left. And so anyway, I had visited with this guy. He was the speaker from California at the time. And I just loved him. He told me some of his story and I'm like, hey, I might be able to do this. And you guys are kind of cool. And so that night, Trudy was asking me, she said, so Kacy, did you get Terry for a sponsor? And I'm like, I don't know. She's the one that told me how to get up here. I said, I'm assuming she's my sponsor. She said, no, Kacy, you have to ask her to be your sponsor. I said, well, how do I do that? And she said, will you be my sponsor? And I was like, I don't even know you people. And she's treating me like this, you know, I felt like I was an inch tall. And I said, okay. So I asked her that night and, you know, she was my sponsor for a long time. And now I have this beautiful Vivian for my sponsor and I totally adore her. And I'll tell you about this real quick too, or when I get to, I'll tell you about Vivian's story. But anyway, so I got this sponsor and he's not living at the house anymore because the cops told him to leave. And, you know, so it's just Kenzie and I, and she had actually went down to her dad's in Wyoming for the summer. So I just did AA all summer. I worked the steps, you know, I was working on the steps and I was feeling so good. You know, you guys talk about this pink cloud and I was totally on this pink cloud. I was loving you and I was actually starting to like me. And it was just great. And then Kinsey came back and she was doing Alateen. And then when Alateen wasn't on, you know, the nights that I went, she went to Al-Anon and she loved you guys and you loved on her. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. But there was a problem with all this. I'm getting sober, but my husband was not getting sober and he wasn't coming back to me anytime soon. And I happened to hear through the grapevine, they said, oh, she was addicted to alcohol and now she's addicted to AA. And that was it for me. It's like, If I'm ever going to get him back, I'm going to have to stop this AA thing, you know? So that's how crazy I was, you know? And so anyway, I started, it was so far to drive, and you guys dresses on Wednesday nights, and I came up with every single excuse in the book not to go to meetings. And I finally just dipped out, you know, in September I dipped out, and you know, it was probably a week or two later, and one of our trucks rolled over, and our one of our drivers passed away, and broke my heart again, you know. More reason to drink. Let's just drink some more. So I pulled into this liquor store, and I looked over my shoulder thinking somebody was watching me, because I had a phone call come from one of you guys. And I'm like, they are everywhere. And so I thought that you guys saw me going into the liquor store. I mean, Billy's not that big. And but they weren't watching me. So I went ahead and bought my liquor, and I went home and I drank. And so I drank for another month, and it never did get back to where it had been, like they always talk about, but it was heading there. I bet another month of drinking, I'd have been drinking just like I was before. And but what happened is on October 21st of 2008, he had broken into the house and ripped the alarm system out of the wall, because, you know, we had set that up. We were living out in the country by ourselves, and we were kind of worried. So he ripped the alarm system out of the wall. And I'm like, you know, what do we do with this? And so my cousins down the road had been on my emergency call list, and they came over to the house with the Kenco people, and they set it all back up, and you know, we felt secure. And I called my cousins back after they had left, because they were watching Kinsey for me until I got home from work, and because I lived about 30 miles out of town. And so I invited them to dinner, and there was a steakhouse down the road about 3 miles, and I said, hey, you know, you guys have helped me out so much. Let me just take you to dinner and get through this day. I mean, it was so stressful. And so they met me down at the steakhouse, and we waited, we ate. It took us about 2 hours, and I had a couple of drinks with dinner. And when I left that steakhouse, and it was a mile down the road, and I wrecked my car, and I lost my little girl in that car wreck. And I don't know how you get over that. But I was done. I didn't want anything to do with you guys. I didn't want anything to do with my kids. I didn't want anything to do with anyone. You know, people surrounded me, you know, for a week and a half until we got through it. Well, actually, I was in the hospital for about 10 days, and I just wanted to die. And I was going to. I promise you, I had every intention of doing that. The women from the group came out and had a meeting at my house, and I'm not coming back to see you guys. I am sorry. I just survived for a few months, and I was waiting for everybody to leave, and they weren't leaving. So I got arraigned on vehicular homicide while under the influence charges, and that happened in January. They got through the holidays, and I'm about to be by myself, you know, because people are going to have to go home. My mom's going to have to go home. She had come and stayed with me for several months, and I got these charges, and my sponsor, my old sponsor that I started with, you know, she called me, and she says, you know, let's meet for coffee. And I said, all right, I don't have anything to lose. You know, I'm still not coming back to see you guys. And but I met her, and we were driving to town because I couldn't drive at that time. And we're driving to town, and she says, Kacy, I can't believe you're so selfish that you would let Aubrey and Devin think that Kinsey was the most important to you. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. She could not have hit me in the face any harder. She hurt my feelings so bad. But that's what a sponsor is for, is because she needed to tell me the truth, because I was going to take my life, and there was nobody that was going to get in the way of that. So I said, I don't know what to do. You know, what do I do with this? And she says, you know, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know that you never have to walk through any of this alone. And she was right. You know, I came back to the group, and I was like, do I have to raise my hand? And she says, Kacy, don't you think they already know you drank? And I was, oh yeah, that's right. They probably know that. And so I came back to the group, you know, and when I was with her in the summertime, you know, I didn't always read. I didn't always pray. I didn't always meditate, that I just felt silly, all those things that she was wanting me to do. And when I came back in January of 2009, I read, I prayed, I meditated. I learned how to meditate and it made all the difference in the world. I love to meditate. If anybody's not doing meditation, oh my gosh, you're missing a huge part. They always say it's not extra credit, but I'll tell you what, that meditation helped me so much. And I love to do it. But anyhow, so I did all these meetings, and she said to go to a retreat. We went to a retreat. She wanted me to do service work, I did service work. The three things that she said will ensure my sobriety is have a sponsor, a home group, and a job in my home group. And I did everything and more. Eventually I started feeling a little bit better. Eventually I stopped crying so much. Eventually I started laughing even a little bit. And that was the hardest thing for me, is like, how can I laugh when I just lost my daughter in a car wreck? Why? I beat myself up so bad, because it's like, if I laugh a little bit, people are going to judge me, because that's what at the time, that's probably what I would have done before I quit drinking. But I didn't realize they weren't judging me. They were just there helping me. And I wouldn't have wanted to help me, but I finally realized that God was coming to me through human skin, through you guys, through all of you coming to me, and they would talk to me. And, I started seeing God shots, and we call them God shots in our group, things that were happening in my life. It's like, I could see God's hand in that. And it was nothing that I had done. It was just God coming to me and showing me that something is here that I'm left for. And I don't know what it is. And, but I got really close with God. And, I don't know about you, but when I'm hurting, I am seeking God. I'm talking to him more than when things are going well, and I don't feel God as much, when things are going well, because I'm not talking to him as much. So I always remind myself, it's like, don't forget he's there, because he's walked through all of this with me. And, I have to remind myself of those things sometimes, because I don't ever want to forget where I came from. So what happened is I got, I waited a year and a half, and I worked those steps with my sponsor. I divorced that guy. Guess what? I met another guy, but he was one of the best things that happened to me. He taught me how, to stand up for myself. He taught me that it's okay to like me. He backed me all the way. I ended up getting sentenced to 16 years, with 11 suspended, with a 3-year mandatory minimum. So I went to prison for 3 years, and there was no way I could get out before that 3 years was up. I tried to go to every program I could, but in Montana, if I have a prison sentence, I'm not getting out until they tell me I'm getting out. And so what happened is I went to prison, and about 6 months into that deal, I ended up marrying that guy. And I didn't have to go to the wedding because he married me by proxy. And so my cousins stood in for me, and I worked all day. And in the meantime, my sponsors over here, it's like, why are you not going to AA meetings? I'm hearing you're not going to AA meetings. It's like, you're not supposed to hear that. This is an anonymous program. And but she was, hearing that I wasn't doing AA. And I said, well, here's the deal. You go to those we had one meeting a week in the prison, and they whine because they don't get their parole. They whine because their girlfriend dumped them. I mean, I don't know what you want me to do about it, because I'm not getting anything out of them. And I was a little belligerent, because I was so miserable when I went back. I feel like I almost lost God a little bit. And if there would have been a drink there, I may have drank it, because I was in a bad place that first 6 months in prison. And so she says, Kacy, have a group conscience, do something different. And I said, all right. So we got all the gals that were doing AA, and we agreed that we would do a book study. So we worked we did the whole first 164 pages in 2 years. It took us a while because it was once a week. And we did the whole 164 pages, and it was kind of like my gift. I got parole in April of 2013, and we finished the first 164 pages at about the same time. So I'm like, that was pretty cool. And then we passed it off to the next gals. And another thing that happened is we got 2 meetings in the prison. I went to them and told them, I said, 1 meeting of AA a week is not enough. We need 2. So we got 2 in the prison, and they still have 2 in the prison. And then we added this retreat that, my sponsor been trying for 20 years to get a weekend retreat in the prison. The churches came in and did that stuff. Why couldn't we? And So eventually they let us have a weekend retreat in the prison, and that is still going. So we come in and, two of the women from the group go in and they work the steps, and a quick work the steps over the weekend. And it's great. Everybody wants to go. It's amazing when you put recovery and people in prison. There's a lot of them that really want to be a part of that. And I take meetings into the prison, into the jail, into the pre-releases here. I go in every chance I get. I love that. COVID pushed us out for a while, but we're now back in the prison, not in the jail yet, but we're back in the prison. And I love those meetings, because I get to see a lot of the women that I knew when I was in there. And I love that they're coming to AA in prison. Well, I end up getting out of prison in June of 2013. And, that husband I told you I married when I was in prison, he was going through some legal stuff of his own. And I got all the way out of the pre-release in December of 14. And I was just trying to get him, through the stuff that he was going through. And it was tough. I couldn't help him. And he didn't have you guys, if he would have had a sponsor and a group behind him, it would have probably been great for him. But he was a loner, he had just a very few friends because he didn't trust a lot of people either. And, but he was a great guy, everybody loved him. And what happened is in January 16th of 2014, I came home and he had taken his life. I didn't drink, but there were times I wanted to drink. My sponsor actually came and lived with me. But I'll tell you, I knew right then what I would have done to my kids. I would have broke their heart. I knew how they would have felt had I done that clear back and, after I had lost Kinsey. And that's just not an option. I've made a deal, and there's times when I get a little bit down, times of the year, when I leave, it's coming up right now. It's in October. And, I just get kind of quiet and, I don't try not to make a big deal of it, but I really throw myself into AA and be with you guys, because if I'm not with you guys, there's a chance that I could just slip away. And I don't want to take that chance. I have an amazing life today. How can you not? If you're working a program and you're relying on God and you work these steps, that all that stuff is fixed, but it doesn't mean I'm not human. So I have to be really careful about that I don't go into a hole that I can't get out of. And I recognize it today. There for the first few years, it took me a minute where, it's like, what's going on with me? I don't understand. And so I go to my sponsor and I talk to the women in my group and I said, and reach out. I have to reach out and I have to pick that phone up. As heavy as it is, I have to pick it up and I have to use it because you guys saved me. I know with sponsoring women that sometimes they'll call me and they're in a crisis. And in 5 minutes, we could be talked off the cliff. And that's what I do for me, is I know if I'm reaching out and saying, hey, I'm not feeling okay, let's go get a cup of coffee. I have women that I ride motorcycles with today, and then it heals me. And I don't want to drink. I know if I don't drink today, I might be okay tomorrow. If I go to a meeting today, I might be okay tomorrow and the next day. But I have to realize that, I'm still an alcoholic. I wake up with this stuff. I have this. So it was a while after my husband passed away. And I got to tell you this because he always says, you never talk about me. So I have this really cool boyfriend now. And he's in the program. And I would not have it any other way. We have recovery together and we help a lot of people together that we love doing it. But he made a mistake about 4 years ago or 5. He bought me a motorcycle. So now I have sponsees that ride motorcycles and I have my best friend that rides a motorcycle. And so if we feel like we're down or something, we go for a motorcycle ride. So, we're gone a lot from him and he doesn't care as long as we're, happy and we're hanging out with sober people. And with that, we get to take a lot of the women that, we hang out with. If they don't ride, we just take them with them. I mean, with us, we just throw them on the back, and it's like, let's go. And it's just like a form of meditation for me. And, God's got us. We have sober living homes today here in Billings, and that's one of the best gifts that we've ever been given. We had a very good friend that started this with us, and he was killed not this last January, but the January before in 2020, before COVID hit. And we had just opened our 6th house, and that was another tough one. He wanted to just help people. He had, I believe, 33 years when the plane went down, and we had opened that last house, and he took 3 of our sober living guys up in the plane with him, because he was giving all of us rides, because he told us that as felons we could still have a career in the airlines somewhere. We could even be a pilot, he said. So several of us were going to go back and get our pilot's license, but we lost him that day. And what an icon in Billings. He was a true servant of Alcoholics Anonymous. He never wanted anything in return, but he always wanted to help people. And that's what we love to do. We're surrounded by newcomers. We love to pass the message and share our experience, strength, and hope, because that's really all this is about, is that let's give that next person a hand up and not a hand down. But we're blessed by the recovery that we have in Billings, because there's some great sobriety here, and that's just God. When I'm starting to have a pity party, and I used to have a lot of them before I got sober, I was stuck in a pity party. Today I just know that I have to go out and help another sick woman, that's come from where I was. And I am no different. I have been through a lot of stuff, but that doesn't mean I'm any different than anyone else. We're all struggling with alcoholism on a daily basis. I'm no better, I'm no worse, but we're all alcoholics. And that's what's really cool about the sober living, is they're coming to us on the same level. We've been there. We try to help them not make the same mistakes that we made, but it's inevitable sometimes that alcoholism just knocks at the door, and we can't save them all. I really wish we could save them all, but it's just not in the cards. But we do get some that come back, once or twice, and maybe the next time we can help them. But we just do our best, about carrying this message that we've been so freely given. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I want to come down. If we make it down to Tennessee, we will call you and look you up. So I probably bored you enough, but thanks for having me. And I just want to say, without you, I am not me. Thank you.